Hey, it's Rick here, and welcome back to Humaning, a podcast where I talk to people about the messy, beautiful art of being a human. Today, I'm chatting with John Williams. This is the third time John's been on the podcast. He's a good friend, and he got slammed with some tough news earlier in the year, and then he texts me and he's like, when are we going to do a podcast about it? And I'm like, cool, let's do it. So I've had a couple of cracks at getting this podcast done, but have failed. This is the third attempt, and we hope you enjoy the conversation. John Williams, welcome back to the Bloody Podcast.
The Bloody Podcast. Thanks, Rick. Why is it a bloody podcast?
Well, I feel like for us, we've been trying to record this thing for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
I
don't even feel like it. It's actually fact.
As long as we're not muted.
No, I don't think we're muted. So
yeah, good.
Yeah, like we sat down. What was it? 2 weeks ago now?
Yep.
Maybe. Yeah, 2 weeks ago on a Friday, and recorded this podcast before we had our weekend at GTB at our study, which, thinking back now, is a crazy thing to do.
You reckon? Anyway, go on.
And then my inability to capture the audio left us a little deflated, didn't it?
I think you were more deflated about it than I was, but it was, to be fair, it was your first outside broadcast.
Yes.
So maybe you weren't in your home comfort zone. But we're back, babies.
We're back, and we were going to be back on Monday last week.
This week, Monday
this week. Yeah.
Oh, no, you're right. We were going to try for the Monday, but then I ended up having a bit of a rough time, or the Tuesday or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's all a bit of a blur. And then we were going to try again Monday, just gone. Anyway, here we are.
Yeah. So it's like our third or fourth attempt at having this conversation.
Yeah.
And I think the funny part and the pretext to that is some of this conversation we've had before.
Yeah, a little bit of it.
We're gonna have a go at having it again in a slightly different way, because there's been a few little additions to the story.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? Nothing's frozen.
Yeah.
it's always moving forwards, backwards, up, down, left, right. So yeah.
So before we jump in, let's do a little check-in. How are you as we sit here on this Friday afternoon, physically, mentally, emotionally?
Yeah. Physically, I'm good, pretty good. We'll talk about what that qualifier means, I'm sure, in a minute. But, in terms of recent experience and stuff, I'm feeling pretty good. And mentally, I'm good. I've just come off a supervision session at GTB where we get to enjoy the experience of watching back a recording of one of our practice client sessions and working through it in exquisite or excruciating detail with a very experienced practitioner and educator.
Yeah.
And that was, it was delightful, even though there are lots of ways that I can improve my work, but it's a delightful process. So I'm feeling kind of quite engaged and sort of energized by that, actually. And what's the other one? Mentally good, actually. I've had a few ups and downs since the last time we attempted this, and I'm kind of really come to terms with that, and things are kind of good. I feel really sort of grounded and just clear on what I'm doing and how I'm going. So yeah, we've got our timing right. We waved off on Monday because it wasn't the right time for me. But yeah. No, I feel like I'm, getting back onto the sort of the crest of that sort of wave. So yeah, I'm in a good place.
Nice.
Yeah. And as is tradition, I'm going to ask the same of you.
Yeah.
We're all
I'll check in for sure. I was just thinking though, as you were talking, like this podcast gets you into rare air of people that have done 3 podcasts with me.
I'm honoured.
It's only Joe, you and Joe.
Well, and this third one was kind of my idea. I
Yeah.
remember when I suggested it to you. We'll probably come back to that too.
Mm.
So maybe it's just
Um,
don't let it turn into a John Williams vanity project.
so then I did this, and then I did this.
Hey Rick, something awesome happened. Get me on the podcast. I want to talk about myself again.
Yeah, they can come across a little bit self-indulgent sometimes, can't they?
Yeah, but people don't have to listen if they don't like it, if they don't
Yeah.
find meaning or value. So it's all good.
But hang around because it's a fucking good story. My check-in physically, I have that strange feeling of feeling hungry even though I've just eaten. Um, I'm playing around with not eating too many carbs during the day, and by Friday, my body's like, "Yeah, fuck enough of that, thanks. I'm ready for some slabs of bread."
Fish and chips.
Yeah. Um, mentally, yeah, I've similar to you. I've just come off writing a report for our supervision, my one coming up, and kind of watching myself do a relatively shit job on a video with a client. So I was actually a bit flat. I was like, oh, what I thought I had in my head, what that session was, and what it actually was, like very different.
Man, yeah, I feel that.
So yeah, I was just like, oh, I hadn't looked at it since I did it. So but mentally excited to be in this space to finish the Friday afternoon off, which feels good. And emotionally, is I was going to say is calm an emotion, but I don't know if it is. Maybe it's the absence of emotion.
Or it could be a tone or a flavour.
Yeah, I just feel a little bit at peace with the world at the moment and myself. And there's been some cool stuff unfolding in my world in the last couple of weeks, and not necessarily needing to go into what that is, but just kind of enjoying the residual emotional benefits of that, and a little bit of steady ground and a little bit less reactivity and a little bit less kind of inner conflict. So kind of
Mm.
lapping that shit up right now.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to notice that that's where you're at and
Mm.
kind of settle into that. It can be really easy to sort of strive. It's like, oh, there's got to be something wrong. There's got to be something I've got to be
Mm.
doing. That's great if you can just be like, actually, it feels pretty good.
Mm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll leave that there. But overall, actually feeling really fucking good to be sitting on here and having this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Me too.
So
And this remote thing feels okay to me. So I guess that's probably known to your listeners. We're not sitting on the couch. I don't get Rocky today, unfortunately.
no, he's
Um,
at my feet snoring as
yeah,
always.
that's it. Where it belongs. But this feels pretty good, actually.
Mm. So tell me a story. Why did you want to come back on the podcast? What's going on?
Well, so the message I sent to you probably 3-4 weeks ago now
Mm-hmm.
was, so Rick, are we going to do a podcast cancer edition?
The cancer edition.
The cancer edition.
Mm.
And you said, I'm up for it if you are. So here we are. So, yeah, that's been a dominant thing in my experience for the last couple of months.
Yep.
The short version, I noticed a little lump in the side of my neck when I was over in India for some work travel early July.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was maybe a swollen kind of gland or something. I was feeling a little bit under the weather, just, sort of food changes and whatever. So very sensibly went to the GP when I got back. He had a poke and a prod, sent me off for a chest X-ray, which was clear, and an ultrasound, which wasn't. And so the ultrasound identified a likely metastatic lymph node in my neck, and the language that they use is an occult primary. Occult meaning hidden, not known yet.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Can we pause
that,
there?
yeah.
So you're in the doctor, and so when did you get that result? Was it when you were in the doctor, or did they call you after? Or
Huh. So I booked a telehealth appointment for the call. So I get this news over the phone,
you're right.
and he's just like, "Yeah, I'm sorry to, have to do it like this, but I'll send you through a referral to a specialist, and all the best." I hung up the phone,
What was that
and
like? That
I
moment?
was, it was fucked. It was like, and Janelle had known that I had this follow up appointment, and she texted me and she's like, "How was it?" And I was just like, "Bad."
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really in that instant, and actually, recounting it now, I'm sort of reconnecting a little bit with that kind of feeling. Yeah, just kind of adrift, maybe is a word, a bit unmoored,
Yep.
you know. Um, and it's just one of those moments in life where you know that something has fundamentally changed
Mm.
or that I knew that something has fundamentally changed, that tomorrow is not going to look like yesterday
Yep.
in some pretty significant ways.
Yep.
And so yeah, that was the immediate experience, really sort of a bit unmoored and
Seismic.
seismic, right? And yeah, not good. And if I've reflected on this, ideally, what my GP would also have done was given me just a contact or a referral to any one of the countless cancer charities out there who have people trained to support people like me at
In that
all
moment, yeah.
stages of diagnosis, of treatment, of recovery, of remission, and all the lifelong process that cancer can be for people.
Yep.
That would have been very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So you got that call, you had the text to Janelle, who's your partner. What happened then?
Things happened very quickly, sort of, by the calendar, by the clock. But my experience of time was very, very slow.
Mhm.
So logistically, I had an appointment with an ENT specialist a couple of days later, and lots of scans, PET scans, MRI, CT, lining up biopsies, all the kind of things you do when this is what's going on. And that was all in aid of, you've got to find the primary. All right. So secondary, lymph nodes are the things that go metastatic because they're the part of our body that picks up the shit.
Mhm.
So they catch cancer cells that get thrown off the primary tumor, and sometimes they lodge there and they grow there as well. So that's kind of that's their function, but it also that makes them a vector for secondary cancers.
Mhm.
So it took 4 or 5 days, I think, of tests and stuff before they identified that the primary was in the neighbouring tonsil.
Okay.
Um, and, my very active and potentially or occasionally anxious imagination uh, didn't do well in that void of information, of knowledge. I'm imagining, all the nasty brain cancers and, fast forwarding all these scenarios and um, I've had, my mother died from cancer some 20 years ago, different and so on, so there's some real sort of close to home stuff there.
Yeah.
And I've seen other people, experience nasty cancers and succumb to them. And so in the absence of knowing exactly what I was dealing with, that anxiety and kind of worst case imagination stuff was running pretty wild.
A
Yeah.
little bit of catastrophizing, hey?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It wasn't like I was running around going, "Oh my God, I'm going to die.
Yep.
My life's over." It wasn't that um, cartoonish.
More
It was
mapping? More like mapping
mapping.
out the
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good way of putting it.
bit of risk
And
management?
or yeah, like and in a way, I mean, I'm sure that, like, if anyone had told me to, calm down, chill out, you don't know what's going on yet, it's probably not that bad, it's probably treatable, like, that wouldn't have worked for me at all, and I didn't get near that,
Yep.
it's, um, I'm, the people who are close to me and on whom I kind of lean for emotional support, um, are more emotionally sort of competent than that,
Yep.
so it's just about, you know, having the experience, not about sort of trying to minimize or, bright side or reframe or any of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
that's really important. That's really important. The worst thing you can say to somebody who's freaking out is, "Oh, it's probably not going to be that bad. Stop freaking out."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So none of that, which is great. Um,
What can I ask you a question?
yeah.
What, what did you get if we call it mapping, like
Mm.
mapping the, potentials, what did you get from that? Like, how did that serve you?
Well, in retrospect, like I wasn't aware of this at the time, but it really had this effect for me. I actually really quickly came to a pretty radical acceptance of what was going on and the possible futures. It prompted a lot of reflection about my imagined future.
Yep.
So I can remember thinking, fuck, I've got this dream. I want to, spend 6 months in Europe and, buy motorbikes and, Janelle and I'll tour around or whatever. And so if this happens and this happens and it turns out that it's a terminal diagnosis and, would I try and squeeze that in quick, all of this kind of
Yep.
like, like what does this mean for my future?
Yep.
And,
But can I
and,
ask, and in that, it wasn't a mortality thing, it was more of how much more life can I squeeze in? Was that right? Is that what I'm hearing?
yeah, I think so. I think so.
Mm.
That's that, around that particular story for sure. Um, lot of reflection on the past in terms of, um, pretty much. I mean, I could maybe boil it down to, well, how would I feel about my life if this marked the beginning of the end of it, right?
Mm.
And I came up all right. I came up all right. I've had some really interesting experiences. I've had some really, meaningful connections and relationships with people. I've learned a lot about myself, and particularly, as we always tend to say in this podcast, last year and a half, 2 years of, really doing that deep work that comes with the study that we're doing.
Mhm.
Um, And, you know, I've sort of had this unofficial life motto of, don't die wondering,
Yep.
right? Which is sort of a flip side of, regretting more the things you don't do than the things you do. That kind of, you know,
Yep.
it's pop psych, but it's true for me.
Yep.
Um,
And you got to road test it a little bit here.
and
So,
I, and yeah, and I've, by and large, I mean, there's always more that I could do, and there are things that I haven't done that I want to do. But by and large, I've made some, given my circumstances, I've made some reasonably courageous decisions around travel, around relationships, around profession and my work and business, and
yep.
I really treasure the relationship I've got with my children, and so generally it was sort of looking back, it's like, well, uh, it's kind of okay. There are things I do differently now, and so on, and there are maybe some things that I didn't do that I would do, and may well do. And then looking forward, I realized that what was kind of stressful about it, or part of what was stressful about it, was the mismatch between my expectation or desire and reality, or the potential, sort of, I get really unwell and the cancer doesn't respond to treatment, sort of scenario future.
Yep.
And like it's a much milder version of it, but it feels kind of illuminating to put some color on it. I had this experience earlier this year before all of this, where I'd bought this motorbike because I wanted to get it set up for touring and a bit off-road and stuff, and I had all sorts of trouble with it. It needed a whole bunch of work when I got it, and and Janelle and I had planned this trip, and I was really looking forward to taking this new bike on the trip, and all of that sort of stuff. And I was getting really kind of disappointed, annoyed, a bit frustrated that I'd put all this money and time and effort in, and this wasn't going to happen.
Yep.
And I had this kind of realization that I've still got a motorbike that works just fine, and I've been on camping trips with this thing just fine. And the only thing that I'm really getting upset about is is the gap between what I thought was going to be happening and what's actually happening. And the fact of the matter is that I can still go on this trip. I'm just not taking the bike that I thought I was going to take. And
Yeah.
like so
It's a funny one because,
it's
like,
yeah,
in that, sorry,
yeah.
it's this gap between perception and reality, or expectation and reality.
Right.
And I remember someone told me a while ago, I think it was a therapist, like, stress is defined as the gap between expectation and reality.
Yeah, checks out for me. Yep.
Done.
Yep. There we go. We're fixed.
But it also speaks to the power of acceptance, doesn't it?
Right. And that acceptance, I'm actually surprised by the degree and almost totality of my acceptance of the reality. And in that time when I still didn't know what the treatment was going to look like, didn't even know what the primary cancer was, like all of that sort of stuff, the acceptance of kind of all of the possible outcomes, from best case, which is we treat it and it goes away and it never comes back. That'd be awesome. And all the other ones that
Yep.
which also include looking the wrong way and getting hit by a bus, or falling off my bike or whatever.
Yep.
So I'm really super grateful for that. I've not experienced any kind of why me sort of stuff. This isn't personal. This is just fucking cancer. It's just environment and genetics coming together with a bit of bad luck, and that's all it is.
Can I pause you there? Because I know you've had a previous cancer experience.
Yep.
And I'm curious, just as you mentioned that there, I'm curious how those two experiences compare. I'm more curious about how they've been different for you.
Yeah, I have. I had a cancer scare, I guess you call them, a couple of years ago, which was only tentatively resolved actually at the beginning of this year. Classic old man health issues, a routine blood test picked up an elevated PSA, prostaglandin specific antigen, whatever, which is an indicator of potential prostate cancer. And that really, I responded quite differently in the uncertainty vacuum around that particular pathology report. In the time leading up to my first appointment with a urologist, and getting sent off for scans, and then really high tension, high anxiety in the approach to getting the results of the scans, and kind of just being convinced that it was going to be bad news. And look, the treatment for prostate cancer is pretty grim.
It's rough, isn't it?
It's rough, and it gets to some pretty fundamental elements, I guess, of male or identity and sexuality and all that sort of stuff, right?
Yep.
And so I think that kind of knocked me sideways a bit. But this all took place in the context of actually pretty modest kind of PSA levels, and the scans were inconclusive. And so yeah, I really struggled with this, with that sort of maybe emotionally far more, I think, than I've struggled with the current actually.
Yeah. So what were the stories back then with the maybe? Like, what were the beliefs that were running through?
Look, I think at the core there was plenty of self-pity going on, and combined with some sort of relational, environmental, the relational sort of context I was in at the time. How do I put this? There.
What's the nicest way to say this?
Yeah, no, and I want to take responsibility for my own, part in it too. The way that sort of situation impacted me emotionally was not an emotional response that my partner at the time, who was not Janelle, that my partner at the time, that hit some real triggers for them.
Yep.
And so that created a bit of an unhappy feedback loop between the two of us, where it got to the point that I started to believe that I couldn't talk about what was going on and my fears. And, there were other, that relationship was relatively short lived, and, for both of us, probably pretty good reason. But, it really hit a gulf in our emotional connection and compatibility and capacity to deal with potentially big stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting though. Like, that crisis can often either bring us together and test us out, or it can break us apart.
Yeah. Yeah. But in fairness, I think there was a fair bit of self-pity and fear, a lot of fear, and a bit of self-pity going on for me that time around.
So you had that experience, and then how was this experience with the actual happening of it? How has it been different emotionally?
I have much greater capacity now for sitting with difficult experiences and emotions, and not needing something to happen about it right away. Not needing a fix, not needing a Band-Aid, just like, this feels like shit, full stop.
Yep.
I have um, for example, my study group. We have these study groups for GTB, and
Yep.
I've been working with the same group of people now for getting on to a year and a half.
Hmm.
2 study years, and we we had study group 2 days after I got this diagnosis, and we do a check in, and I had a choice to make. Do I just pretend, or do I bring it and keep it real?
Yep.
And we have progressively, as we work together, been leaning into being more real with each other. It's part of the work that we do. The
Yep.
vulnerability and everything that goes with it. So they were the first people who I told outside, I think, Janelle.
Yep.
I'm not even sure I told my kids at that stage, because I wanted more intellectual control of the situation before I brought my kids into that loop. I wanted some answers to some of their reasonable questions before I didn't want them in the uncertainty vortex, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah. So that the capacity to be vulnerable about what was going on for me, the trust in the relationships around me, my relationship with Janelle. I think I told you pretty quickly. Told my sort of core group of friends, the guys I've been friends with for 30 years,
Yep.
and study group. And I didn't even have an ask. Like, there wasn't anything I had identified that I needed. That sort of stuff came later.
Yep.
But that was incredibly supportive, and just kind of, yeah, there was no one in that circle trying to fix, trying to minimize,
Trying to frack you.
um, no, trying to fix me.
Yeah. Yep. I think it just speaks volumes to the power of being able to sit with someone's experience,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
also the power of being on the receiving end of other people being able to sit with your experience.
It's massive. It's massive. And look, I get it. Like, it's really fucking hard to hear another person's difficulty and
Mm,
feel completely powerless to do, in the
mm,
video, I'm doing air quotes, to do something about it. That's hard, because we don't want to see people we care about in pain, and their stories probably triggering fear and emotion and memory and connection and
mm.
all that sort of stuff in us. But there's actually nothing you have to do except just be there
Yep.
and hear it and witness it and accept their pain. It's nothing to do,
Mm.
and it's kind of the core of what we do in Gestalt too. Actually, we sit in witness together with each other, one's client, one's therapist, and we, that's the starting point. There's
Yeah.
more we do, of course, but that's where it starts.
So to come back to that timeline, you've shared with Janelle, you've shared with your study group, you've shared with a few friends. Um, I think that kind of led into our next weekend together, didn't it? Because then you
Mm,
kind of it was just before you started treatment.
yeah, yeah. So the Friday morning of that weekend was when I got the confirmation that the primary was in the neighbouring tonsil, and probably nowhere else. Like, it
Yep.
looked like that was where it was kind of originated, and the MRI didn't pick up any spread anywhere else. Little glimmer over on the other side lymph node, so that's getting radiated too. But and the I think the biopsy had probably been done by then. No, I think the biopsy was still to come. So at least I knew I wasn't dealing with some so the sort of the the knowledge was closing in a little bit, and
Yep.
of course I was starting to do a bit of research on what treatment looks like and all of that sort of stuff, um, typical sort of response rates for this type of cancer, and all the I'm intellectually very engaged with what's going on as well as the rest of it, but yeah, but that was really tough actually that weekend, and I wrestled all weekend until Sunday afternoon actually, with if and how I sort of share that with the broader group. It felt really strange to sort of see people, the people we see in the way that we see them, and how you going? Yeah, pretty good. That felt wrong.
Yeah.
That felt wrong. It also felt wrong though to be sort of dropping a clanger in every single first contact I had with every single person for the whole weekend. That didn't feel right either. But it also didn't feel right to just kind of throw it out there on Friday night and say, well, this is what's going on for me. I didn't, and it took those sort of a day and a half. And actually, we did a CTO, these practice client therapist observer supervisor kind of sessions. We did CTOs on the Sunday, and I took the opportunity there because I paired with someone actually from my study group as my therapist, and I jumped in the client chair, and I chose to bring it up there in that little group. So there were a couple of kind of people who weren't in the know there as observers. So it was a little kind of trial run, a little microdose, if you like,
Yep.
of kind of disclosure and what that felt like, and that was fine. But something that the supervisor, so he's a recent former student at the school, said to me afterwards, really kind of landed, and it was something about have you kind of identified what it is you want? And I was like, that's really interesting. I didn't know what I wanted. I hadn't even thought about, what did I want from the act and the process of sharing this news in the broader sort of, in my broader study community. And that really triggered, I think we went away to lunch then. And after lunch, I came back and I spoke to, to Sharon, one of our educators, who I told her on the Friday night, I needed her to know that there was something big going on for me. But, yeah, and I said, look, I think I know what I want now. I think I'd like the opportunity to speak briefly, just to tell people what's going on, and because it doesn't feel right to be sitting on it.
Yep.
And that's all I want right now. I just want to be heard. I don't want a big round of 30 people giving me their support and resonance and all that sort of stuff. That's not what I wanted at the time.
Yep.
And she facilitated that beautifully. And it was perfect. And afterwards, a couple of people came up and checked in with me, and that was great. And there are people there, because we've had a weekend since. There are people there with whom I haven't talked about cancer at all, and that's fucking great too.
Yeah. Fully.
There's a lot more to me than cancer and cancer treatment. So it's it was yeah.
I'm low key giggling as you're talking because I just wish. I feel a bit bad saying this. I wish some other people in our group would have the same level of discernment as you do around sharing.
I'm not going to go near that, Rick.
That was a well thought out choice by you, and sometimes in our group there are not well thought out choices around sharing stuff. So, well done.
Yeah, look, it's deeply personal, right?
Yeah.
And everybody makes the choice that seems right for them. But I don't want to bring my own uncontained, unprocessed, deep, hard stuff in a large group setting.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm there for. I will bring things that are deep and powerful that I've maybe worked through in therapy, and I've got some sort of sense of integration of what that means to me and how it sits, and I'm quite comfortable now, bringing that as material to work with as we learn about our practice.
Yep.
But for me, um, I feel safer if I have some level of integration of of the thing that I'm bringing.
Yeah.
That's what works for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the practical steps from there? Like, what does it look like, treatment wise for you?
Yeah, so it's a 7 week program. No, so 7 weeks of daily radiotherapy. So I lie in this, what is essentially an overpowered CT scanner,
Yep.
and I've got this sort of plastic mesh mask that was made, and that fits perfectly. It's molded onto my face, so that holds me in exactly the same position on the bed every time. They take a quick scan to make sure it's all lined up, and then they blast my tumor with high energy X-rays. So that's radiotherapy, and so that process takes about 10 minutes
Yep.
every day of the week. Um, and that is the primary means by which they disrupt the cellular replication of the cancer. Um, and in conjunction with that, so I'm at the end of week 5 now, which seems pretty amazing to say.
Mhm.
And in conjunction with that, in weeks 1, 4, and 7, I go in on the Monday and I spend all day on an IV bag, and they hydrate the hell out of me. And then they give me a bag of very potent chemotherapy drugs
Yep.
and a bunch of other things to help me manage the side effects of those chemotherapy drugs.
Yep.
Um, and for the next week, my blood is, and all of my body fluids, in fact, are what is known as cytotoxic. I have chemicals in my blood that actively work to disrupt DNA replication. And so that affects everything in my body, not just cancer.
Yep.
And it means that healthcare workers have to wear, they wear purple gloves, purple gowns, purple waste bins for cytotoxic, contaminated material. I have to show that to any healthcare workers that I interact with, so they know to take appropriate precautions. I mean, it's a workplace risk. It's not like if you get a drop in my blood, you're going to die, because
Yep.
clearly, I'm full of it, and it doesn't kill me either. But anyway, so and yeah, so that kind of swirls its way around my system for 5 days, and on the Friday of those weeks, I go back in and spend the afternoon or the morning just getting a full hydration flush, just give my kidneys a break.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so that's
How
what
is
the treatment looks like.
So that's the physical part of it. How is the emotional part of that being in response to A, getting the treatment, but also the actual effects of the treatment on your day to day?
Right. Well, my day to day is completely changed. So I treat myself as a full time cancer patient who is also doing his very best to continue studying.
Mhm.
So I have the mother of all medical certificates. Um, 3 months, John's incapable of, John's not fit for work, study. I just took that to the university. I'm part time there, and I said, "Sorry, guys, I'm out. I'll see you in December," and that
Yep.
was fine. Large employer. I got mountains of sick leave, blah blah blah. So that was fine. Um, and in my business, I obviously, told my partners and said, "Look, my capacity to remain active in the business is going to diminish,
Yep.
and probably evaporate, by the end of this kind of two-ish 3 month period." And they were super understanding about that. I still remain sort of connected. I catch up with when we get the core team together, and I keep an eye on what's going on. I read the meeting notes just because I'm interested in the business, and give my brain something to do. But I'm basically not. I have the luxury of not having to work, and having the means to facilitate that. So I'm a full-time cancer patient, and that is tremendously valuable. I mean, it's a tremendous privilege. I live 5 minutes from the hospital where I'm treated, so I walk up there every day for a 10-minute appointment. Gets me a bit of exercise, a bit of fresh air. So
Yep.
I got a lot of very supportive logistical kind of circumstances that
Mhm.
allow me to do that, and that has a radical impact on how well I can be a patient. how well I can manage my nutrition, how well I can manage my I've got like speech therapy exercises because the muscles in the throat are all being radiated at the same time. Like the radiation's well targeted, but it's not perfect. So I've got speech therapy exercises I got to do. I've got this super strict oral care routine, which is, clinically demonstrated to improve the severity of the side effects, because the side effects of my treatment are pretty rough.
So when you say you're a full-time cancer patient, it's literally true, isn't it?
Yes, yeah,
Like a
I'm a full-time
full-time job.
cancer patient. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm acutely aware that not everybody has that opportunity, and I really feel for them, and I wish they could. Everybody who goes through this, if I was on casual work, if I lived remotely and I needed to travel, it's daily, every single day of the week, I'm at the hospital for 10 minutes. And I live right next door to a really high quality hospital.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you say you're week 5 now of 7?
Yeah. Just yep. After we wrap up here, I got my last radiation treatment for the week,
Cool.
and 2 more weeks of that, and in 2 weeks from now, I'll do another round of chemo, and then we give my body a bit of a time to recover.
Yep.
And we do some more scans at 6 weeks and see how that's looking. Pick up any early signs of perhaps not fully successful treatment, and it means you can sort of jump back on top of it quickly before if it's not fully fully it's not called remission at that point, but anyway, so they don't wait too long, and then there'll be a follow-up scan at about 12 weeks, and then hopefully that's clear, and then I just go into annual review, and if not, then we deal with that.
Yeah. I'm curious about what the emotional journey's been over the last 5 weeks for you. So, like, obviously, there's an element of it being a roller coaster, but I'm assuming that. I'm just interested to hear your version of that.
Yeah, and this is where my answer would have been very different 2 weeks ago than it is today. So this is some good stuff. My emotional, I don't know what you call it, a posture or state, by and large, has been really positive. Supported by pretty much everything we've talked about in the last half an hour. Right?
We haven't mentioned Janelle yet.
Yeah, we have.
Well, only briefly.
But Janelle's been a big part of that. Super supportive emotionally and practically and all that sort of stuff. My physical, I mean, I was really fit and healthy physically going into this as well, right?
Yep.
My capacity to approach my treatment as a full-time job and do it seriously. The side effects of my treatment are cumulative, right? Particularly the radiation. There's no physical pain or discomfort in sitting under a radiation beam for 2 minutes. Like, you don't feel anything at all, like nothing. But it's like a slow moving sunburn, right? It accumulates just a little bit every day. So the first couple of weeks I had basically no symptoms at all. And then started to feel a bit of a scratch in the throat. And then, I'd look in the back of my throat with a torch and it was like, oh yeah, okay, there's a bit going on back there. It's a pretty gnarly scene. We're going to spare your listeners that. But, and of course, what that impacts is my ability to eat. And nutrition's critical because I've got to maintain weight, because if you start losing weight, that has consequences in terms of the accuracy of the treatment, and so nutrition is vital. But over the course of those 7 weeks, it actually becomes increasingly difficult. And so for the first sort of four and a bit weeks, that was all going pretty well. Just managing pain with Panadol, and
did that mean the emotional side of it was pretty balanced?
Yeah. I was feeling good. I was doing my normal thing. Janelle and I went away for a weekend on the motorbikes, had a great time. I'm not experiencing physical pain. I'm not experiencing sort of challenges with eating, all that sort of stuff. So I was actually just, in a way, kind of living my best life. Like, I'm not going to work. Things really slowed down. I had a lot of time for
Mm.
for me, for other people, um, and in a way, yeah, that kind of slowing down was emotionally really uplifting.
Mm.
You know what it's like. You can get caught up in full-time work and the busyness and
Yes, I do.
the doing,
Mm.
and all of that just went away. Now, of course, I'd rather be on holidays for 3 months than getting cancer treatment for 3 months. But so yeah, emotionally, that was all pretty good. I understood the treatment. I like I said before, I engaged sort of intellectually with my condition, with the treatment, with the side effects, with the management. Ask lots of questions, do a bit of research. Just kind of that's part of that is supportive to me to really understand what's going on. I
Yep.
know why this doctor is putting me through this very difficult treatment. Like, I'm not second guessing his
Yeah,
decision
yeah,
making
yeah.
because
Yep.
to a competent sort of layperson level, I understand why we're doing this and I
Mm.
support that decision. Right. So that helps me to deal with the fact that it's not fun.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, uh, then, sort of late last week, um, I kind of hit a bit of a wall. It got to the point where I need stronger pain relief to eat around meals. So now I pop an endo in half an hour before I have a substantial meal,
Yep.
just to manage so that it's sufficiently the pain in the back of my throat is sufficiently dulled that I can consume enough food to meet my nutritional sort of requirements. And they're elevated because my body's freaking the fuck out, going, holy shit, all this radiation damage. Like, so I'm supposed to be on 10,000 kilojoules a day. And under normal circumstances, if I was on 10,000 kilojoules a day and not working out 7 days a week, I'd be bulking up. But I'm actually losing weight slowly on that diet,
Yep.
right? Um, so it all just sort of started to land. I was getting really hyper focused on maintaining my weight and sort of trying to be a perfect patient. Nutrition was getting harder. I've got these high energy, high protein sort of super supplement things. There's a massive market for all of this amongst all sorts of people who need this kind of diet and these and other treatments. They're not particularly palatable, most of them. They try, but the texture is goopy and not syrupy, it's just goopy. So the other physical side effect um, is because my salivary glands are in the blast zone, and because there was this little glimmer on the other side, so they're radiating both sides of my throat. So my
Yep.
salivary glands are in the process of being permanently destroyed.
Yep.
So I have a constant dry mouth, stuff that comes with that. So I'm constantly sipping water. I've got little mouth moisture spray things like and that will be an ongoing. That's just me for the rest of my life. It
Yep.
doesn't really get much better. You just get used to it. So
Because
food,
even before, sorry,
yeah, sure,
um, I'm just thinking about because you were talking about at the end of last week, things started to get a bit bumpy,
yeah,
and I know we had plans with
Monday,
kind of like, let's come down and we'll do the podcast live. Come and do men's circle with us on the Monday night. Stay
mm-hmm.
the night, meet Finn, like all the things.
Mm.
And I think I got a message from you, and it was like, I am not in a place to broadcast this shit right now.
So there were two phases to that, right? First of all, it was coming down is not the right thing for me to do. Like, I'm a homebody these days. Like, it takes me 45 minutes to eat a bowl of scrambled eggs, right?
Yep.
So the idea of going to your house and trying to find a way to eat with you and or managing my nutrition, I don't go to cafes and restaurants because I don't enjoy the food. I
Yep.
can't. Oh, and I can't taste the food either because my taste buds are also getting blasted.
Yeah.
So
Small
for some
small detail.
for someone, yeah, I keep forgetting that little one. They're going to come back. Apparently, that'll be nice. So for somebody who loves food, loves cooking, and so on. So initially it was like, nah. And also because I'm on endone, when I have a main meal,
Yep.
that I'm getting used to them now, but they just dull. everything, physical sensation, a little bit emotional sensation for me. And I didn't want to bring, excuse me, bring that into your men's circle.
Yep.
That didn't feel right. I don't, I want to honor that. And so, yeah, so logistically and, then having to drive back early the next morning for radiation. So logistically, so I waved us off and I said, let's try a remote one.
Yep.
But then Monday was my sort of low point in terms of just hyper fixated on not getting my nutrition, of gagging when I was trying to drink these high energy drinks. And so that's the point at which I said to you, actually, I don't. And it's a bit like that business about sharing in GTB, right? Like I'm perfectly okay to talk about it now because I've been through it, I've processed it, I spoke to my dietitian and speech therapist yesterday about it, and I'm sort of out on the other side of it. So I've kind of processed it, integrated it. It's real, but it's not live. But on Monday,
It
the
was
idea
live.
of trying to show up for this podcast when I was feeling that way, I wasn't going to sort of present and tell the cheery story of John who's trying to rock his cancer treatment. I felt like shit, and I didn't want to broadcast that raw.
That's a really interesting point, though, because you're not the only person to be on this podcast and speak to the challenge of giving voice to things when they're in the middle of it,
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then retrospectively being able to look back, whether it's a day, a week, whatever, and be like, oh, yeah, that was that, and then I could see that. I just think it's part of our, natural being. And I think awareness is a funny one because there's the awareness of what happened after the fact. There's the awareness of what's happening in the moment, which is tough. And then there's the early warning signs of something that's happening as it starts to slowly build, and I think most of us hang out up the other end. That reflective.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. For me, it certainly feels safer. I mean, but I could put another angle on that, just to kind of pick at my own sort of way of being for a minute. There's also potentially an element of control there. When something's live, when it's fucking right here, right now, I haven't processed it. I don't know where I'm at with it. I'm just fucking in it, and potentially struggling. Well, or actually struggling. There are places and spaces for me for sharing that. Talk to Janelle, talk to you, talk to a therapist, talk to my clinical team.
Yep. But not on that list is broadcasting it on a podcast.
No, but back to the control thing. It's like, in some ways, I think it's kind of natural. I want to feel like I've got a little bit of control over my story, and that feels right.
And it's also really common. There's quite a few people that I want on this podcast that have not come on because they don't want to get their story wrong. They don't want to say the wrong thing, which is understandable. Like, it's a version of a time capsule that gets captured,
And that was oh, sorry, go on.
No, you go.
Oh, I was just going to say that was part of, when I sent you that text however many weeks ago. So we're doing the cancer edition. Part of that was because, that's a reflection of obviously how I was feeling in that moment, right? In those early days, once I'd kind of wrapped my head around the diagnosis, wrapped my head around the treatment. I'm early in the treatment. I'm still feeling strong. Well, all of a sudden I'm not going to work every day. So I've got time and space and, this is, you might see a bump in listenership on this episode if it offsets the people who switch off because it's like, not that fucking guy again. But, you might see a bump in listenership because I suspect I'm probably going to let a few people in my broader circle know about this podcast, because it's an opportunity for, I really enjoy working with you as someone to sort of midwife the story, right? To sort of help its delivery and so
Midwife the story. I never
yeah,
heard that.
fucking
But it makes sense.
a doula or a midwife, like it's kind of like, you're not doing the work, but you're helping give birth to this thing, which in this case is my expression of this part of my life. Um, so
So
yeah,
you don't
I
have to say it over and over and over again.
no, and it's focusing on the elements that I feel are important.
Hmm.
Like so yeah, and yeah, it will be a time capsule, and I'm really glad that it's going to exist in that fashion, because I'm a terrible fucking journaler. As in, I don't. Shh, don't let GTB staff hear that. But yeah, I'm terrible at that shit. But this is at least a snapshot.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does it look like navigating through the next couple of weeks? Like, not so much the practical, but more
Mm.
of what's the intention, what's the mentality, what's the emotional state that you want to bring to the next couple of weeks?
So 40% of the people undergoing this treatment end up being hospitalized with a feeding tube just because they can't manage nutrition. That's just a clinical fact.
Yep.
I'm doing everything I can to be the other 60%.
Yep.
Because I don't want that. That is complicated by the fact that my private health insurance is garbage, and I've elected to be treated privately. But if I have to get admitted to a private hospital, I'm not going to pay that. So there are some real logistical shit that I was worried about. This was part of my stress on Monday. It's like, okay, well, if I can't keep feeding myself and I have to be admitted to hospital, what's that going to look like? And so I've cleared that up with my clinical team. They're like, if necessary, you can be admitted to a public hospital for just general nutrition and feeding and weight pain management. And as long as you can get yourself back here every day for your radiation appointments, and no problem at all. And I'm like, right. So that just takes this huge weight off my mind, that I know that even if I can't cope, it's not going to, break the bank or interrupt my treatment. So it's like,
So
okay,
was there a unspoken pressure that you were feeling of like, I have to fucking keep this? Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
have to nail this or
right,
else I'm going to end
right.
up there.
Right, because the other thing that happened last week was that I ended up in emergency overnight after my chemo. I got home and I ran a fever, and that's a very dangerous thing when you're under chemo, potentially a very dangerous thing. And of course, I'm not going to the local private hospital emergency because it's going to cost me a fortune. So I went to the public, the PA, and that was all fine. And there was, they did all the right things, and got through that, came home, whatever. But that really put the possibility of hospitalisation in my mind,
Okay.
and so that was part of the stress of that as
Yep.
well. Yeah, yeah. So that the knowledge that it'll be okay if the short term worst plays out, that is super calming to me, and that's allowed me to relax. So how am I feeling about the next couple of weeks? I know it's going to continue to get harder. Every day it's harder. Every day it's a little bit harder. But I'm actually really feeling pretty sort of empowered by going through the experience I had last week, early this week, and getting through it, and finding support, asking for help, putting my foot in the door at the oncologist and say, here are the 4 questions I need answered, and making him take the time to answer those questions.
Yep.
So, and my mood has, is back. I'm feeling, I've changed my attitude towards eating, so eating's now just a job. It takes me an hour to eat dinner, and I just take tiny mouthfuls, swallow them with a sip of water. And my dietitian said something yesterday. She said, what you want is the opposite of mindful eating. You want mindless eating. Just put on the TV, scroll on your phone, whatever, and just chip away at it. and so that, big reframe around my nutrition. Experimenting a little bit with different brands of these drinks. I found some that are a bit more palatable, so I got them ordered. So, if I have to, I can just drink 8 of these a day, and that's my protein and calorie intake. It'll keep me out of hospital.
Yep.
Cool. So I'm feeling pretty good. I know it's going to get harder. There's a pain relief escalation pathway that I can go down if necessary.
Yep.
I'm okay with that. And yeah, worst case, I end up in hospital, and that'll be okay too.
Yep. I just want to acknowledge and maybe even honor just the fact that you're on here speaking about this. It could have been really easy not to do this. And I just appreciate getting your perspective of like how you're doing cancer and your experience of it. And I'm grateful that I could, help birth the story, so to speak. But it is 100% your fucking story and your experience, and I'm just glad we could get some of it on a recording.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Rick. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity to do so. And I'm also appreciating the fact that hopefully this one actually goes in the can.
Well, it does say recording on both of our audios right now, so let's not jinx it. And yeah, I feel terrible about that shit because it is such a personal thing to put all this down,
I found it useful. I told you this when 2 minutes after we finished the last attempt at this, and I was out of the room, and I just heard you go, "Fuck!" You might have even thumped the table. I don't know if that was me mishearing, but
No, that was true.
yeah, okay. And I think I knew then what had happened, but I said to you then, and it was true, mate. I still got a lot out of this, even if nobody else will. So, but yeah, there's a this version of the story is different to the one that I told 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's got some extra little gristly bits in it, and that's all real and valuable too.
And I think about the things that I wrote down when I started this podcast was I'm giving myself the gift of the conversation, myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving the guest the gift of the conversation, and I'm giving the listener the gift of the conversation. And they can take whatever they want from it,
Yeah.
And I've definitely been on the receiving end from this conversation. So, well, both of them even. So,
yeah. Well, me too. And hopefully, this means something to somebody else who tunes in as well.
Yeah, definitely. All right, mate. Thank you so much. And
till next time.
well, yeah, I was going to say good luck, but it's nothing to do with luck. Just keep doing your thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
All
right.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, mate.